Welcome back to the Redacted Tapes, the podcast where we investigate paranormal, unexplained science, hidden history, and controversial ideas that challenge the way we see reality. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating topics of modern science and psychology: psilocybin mushrooms, better known as magic mushrooms. For decades, they were dismissed as dangerous drugs associated with the counterculture movement in the 1960s. Governments banned them, research nearly disappeared, and simply mentioning psychedelics often carried a stigma. But today, something remarkable is happening. Scientists at one of the world's leading universities are studying psilocybin, not as a recreational drug, but as a possible treatment for depression, anxiety, PTSD, addiction, and other mental health conditions. Some people truly believe these mushrooms are the future of psychiatry. Others believe they are open the doors to spirituality, altered consciousness, or even dimensions beyond our own. And then there's microdosing, a growing trend where people take tiny amounts of psilocybin hoping to improve creativity, focus, and an emotional well-being without experiencing a full psychedelic trip. So what does science actually say? How do these mushrooms affect the brain? Can they really help people struggling with mental illnesses? Or are the claims getting ahead of the evidence? Let's explore it.
Connecticut lawmakers are going to vote today to expand a program that uses psychedelic mushrooms, magic mushrooms, to treat PTSD, extending it beyond veterans to first responders and frontline healthcare workers.
And that's right. In fact, Connecticut does have a mushroom program. It is mainly for veterans with PTSD. But today, lawmakers are voting to expand the program, mainly because of the positive benefits mushrooms are showing.
Long before laboratories and clinical trials, psilocybin mushrooms were already part of human history. Evidence suggests that indigenous cultures in Central and South America used psychedelic mushrooms in sacred ceremonies for thousands of years. The Aztecs called them teonatlalt, meaning the flesh of the gods. For them, these mushrooms weren't entertainment. They were the tools for healing, spiritual guidance, and connecting with something greater than themselves. Shamans used them during rituals to seek answers, diagnose illness, and help people process grief and trauma.
We separated from fungi 650 million years ago.
Maybe you did, dude. I know some people that are probably still.
Well, basically, we are descendants of fungi.
Yeah.
We share more common ancestry with fungi than we do with any other kingdom.
And fungi are closer to animals than they are to plants.
Animals came from fungi.
Whoa.
You and I are actually fungal bodies.
Oof.
I'm speaking to basically another fungal body right now. So Joe Rogan, I mean, whether you know it or not, you're basically a fungal mass.
Okay.
And from a cellular point of view, under the microscope, human cells, animal cells, and fungal cells are very, very similar.
To many indigenous traditions, altered states of consciousness weren't just considered hallucinations. They were another way to experience reality. Western interest in psilocybin exploded in the 1950s after amateur mycologist R. Gordon Wasson traveled to Mexico and participated in traditional mushroom ceremonies. His published account captivated readers around the world. Soon after, Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann, the same scientist who first synthesized LSD, isolated psilocybin and identified its active form of psilocin. Researchers immediately saw potential. Throughout the 1950s and the 1960s, scientists investigated whether psychedelics could help treat alcoholism, depression, anxiety, and other mental health conditions. But as psychedelics became associated with political unrest and the counterculture movement, governments imposed strict bans. For decades, research nearly vanished.
2 million years, the human cortex tripled in size and the brain exploded over a ridiculously short span of evolutionary time. 2 million years is nothing when it comes to evolution. What triggered that?
In the late 1970s, Terence McKenna and his brother Dennis McKenna were the first that proposed the stoned ape hypothesis. It is known now that 22 primates, 23 including us, consume mushrooms.
When you eat psilocybin mushrooms, your body converts psilocybin into psilocin. Psilocin interacts primarily with serotonin receptors in the brain. Serotonin helps regulate mood, perception, learning, and emotion. One of the biggest discoveries involves the brain's default mode network, or DMN. Think of DMN as the brain's autopilot. It's active when you're thinking about yourself, replaying memories, worrying about the future, or mentally replaying conversations. In people with depression, this network can become trapped in repetitive cycles of negative thinking. Brain imaging studies suggest that psilocybin temporarily disrupts these rigid patterns. Instead of repeating the same thoughts over and over, different brain regions begin communicating in unusual ways. Researchers believe this temporary flexibility may help people develop healthier ways of thinking.
Since we began this work, we have conducted research in over 600 psilocybin sessions. We brought people back a month later or 2 months later and interviewed them. We have anywhere from 70 to 80% of people saying that this is in the top 5 most meaningful experiences of their life. With respect to spiritual significance, in our first study, we had 30% of people saying it was the single most spiritually significant experiences of their entire life. And when you'd ask, well, what does that mean? You know, you're saying this is in the top 5. What does that really mean to you? People would kind of look off and say, you know, when my first child was born, that changed my entire life. You know, my life would never be the same. And my father recently passed away, and that's hugely moving. They'd say, you know, it's kind of like that. And so that's the metric that they're using, these huge experiences that everyone has, but this is occurring in a single 6-hour session in a session room at Johns Hopkins. I have worked at Johns Hopkins for over 40 years. I work long hours, and I work more than 5 days a week. And I can't say I've had one of the most, you know, top 5 experiences of my life there at Hopkins.
Another exciting area of research is neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to form new connections and reorganize itself. Scientists are investigating whether psilocybin creates a temporary window during which the brain becomes specially adaptable. Imagine hiking the same trail every day until it becomes deeply worn. Negative thinking can work the same way. Psilocybin may allow people to step off that worn path and create new ones.
It's absolutely clear that the nervous system can change in response to experience. So this thing we call neuroplasticity is really that. It's the brain's ability to modify itself in response to experience. And I think it's important to understand that from birth till about age 25, the brain is extremely malleable in a kind of almost passive way where kids are exposed to things and the brain is just wiring up. I mean, the brain is really designed to adjust itself in order to be in concert with its surroundings and to optimize that, just the way we described it a minute ago.
Like the way that a child can learn a language very quickly,
or 3 languages,
play the guitar or something like that.
Yeah, without an accent. You know,
Right.
3 languages without an accent. It's remarkable. You try and do that after age 25. It's very challenging. The brain is basically designed to be customized in the early part of life, and then to implement those algorithms and that circuitry for the rest of its life. And so the brain can change in adulthood. And it can change provided that there's an emphasis on some perceptual event.
That doesn't mean the mushroom alone fixes someone. Instead, many researchers believe they create an opportunity where therapy, reflection, and behavioral changes can become more effective.
I'm in this therapeutic session with the psilocybin, the medicine, and the therapist. And I know that I'm 70 years old, and I know this is a therapy session, and I know her name, and I know who I am in the world. But at the same time, I'm experiencing myself as a 1-year-old baby, and she's my mother. And I start crying. Tears come down my face, and I say, I'm so sorry I made your life so difficult. Now, that was an unconscious memory of my sense of myself as a 1-year-old, that I made my mother's life so difficult, because that's the way the baby interprets it.
How does somebody at 70 years old go about correcting that
by bringing up to the conscious level. Then when I notice that sense of guilt or responsibility in me, I say, oh, that's what it's about.
One of the strongest area of research focuses on major depression. Clinical studies have shown that when psilocybin is combined with trained therapists and careful preparation, many participants experience dramatic improvements in depressive symptoms. Some participants reported improvements lasting months after 1 or 2 supervised sessions. Researchers emphasize that this is not the same as taking mushrooms at home. Clinical treatment usually includes extensive screening, preparation, a professional supervised session, and follow-up therapy to help integrate the experience. The therapy is considered just as important as the psychedelic itself.
Normal treatment is to put you on antidepressants and therapy, or one or the other or both, right? So I asked the guys at Stanford, I said, you want to study it? Well, what are the meta studies? You know, when you have multiple studies, they give you the averages. And they said, well, the meta studies show that 60% of the people who take antidepressants, and now they know SSRIs don't even work. Cover of Newsweek says meta studies show the SSRIs don't work, but we keep selling them. The most effective study in science. They said there was a study done at Johns Hopkins about 5 years ago. And here's what they did. They gave people psilocybin for a month, magic mushrooms, and cognitive therapy. I said, well, you ought to get some change out of that. He goes, yeah, it was the greatest change they've ever seen in the history of psychiatry. 6 weeks after treatment, 54% of the people had no symptoms of depression.
Dude, I take 4 stems and a Diet Coke. I'll talk to my sister for an hour, you know? So I fully support that.
Scientists are also studying psilocybin for people living with severe anxiety, especially those facing terminal illnesses. Many participants have reported feeling less afraid of death and more accepting of life's uncertainties. Researchers are also exploring psilocybin-assisted therapies for PTSD, alcohol addiction, nicotine dependence, or obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD.
Well, I started the research in 2014. I wrote a piece for The New Yorker called The Trip Treatment, which is online, and it was my first foray into this work. I went down to Hopkins and spent a lot of time at NYU, and at the time they were doing this really interesting trial where they were giving psilocybin to people with cancer diagnoses, many of whom were terminal. And that seemed like such a weird idea to me that I was curious to explore it. And I spent a lot of time talking to patients, many of whom were dying, about how this single high-dose psilocybin experience, a guided psilocybin experience, and we should talk a little bit about how the guided changes things for, you know, it's not, the image people have is popping some mushrooms in your mouth and maybe going to a concert or going to the beach, but this is a very controlled internal experience. Completely reset these people's attitude toward death and allow them to die with equanimity. And when these results were published just last year, they found that that in 80% of the people who had the session, they had statistically significant reductions in standard measures of depression and anxiety. It was one of the most effective psychiatric interventions that these psychiatrists had ever seen, which is amazing, a single experience.
The results are promising, but these treatments are still being studied and are not yet standard medical care. Now let's talk about one of the biggest trends surrounding psychedelics, microdosing. Microdosing means taking a very small amount of psilocybin, far below the level that causes a full psychedelic experience. Many people claim it helps improve mood, creativity, focus, emotional resilience, and productivity, while allowing them to continue their normal daily activities. But here's where things get interesting. Scientific research on microdosing is mixed. Some studies have found that people report feeling better while microdosing. Others carefully controlled studies suggest that many of those improvements may also occur in people taking a placebo. Researchers are still trying to determine whether the benefits came from the drug itself or the expectation that it will help, or a combination of both. At this point, the evidence for microdosing is far less convincing than the evidence for supervised psilocybin-assisted therapy.
The best theory that I've come across is that if you look at the different disorders that psychedelics appears to be effective in treating, depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, addiction, All of these are mental disorders that involve a kind of rigidity of thought. People stuck in loops of rumination, inflexible thinking. They need this drug to get through the day. They have this narrative in their head that they're a bad person, that nothing is working in their life, or they have anxiety and they replay loops about, what makes them anxious. What psychedelics appear to do, what psilocybin appears to do, is break those habits of thought. It's kind of a solvent. And so that it shakes things up in a way that makes the brain more plastic, more able to learn new patterns.
Psilocybin is not without risk. Some people experience overwhelming fear, panic, confusion, or emotional distress during a psychedelic experience. Those with a personal or family history of psychotic disorders or a bipolar disorder may face an increased risk. Psilocybin can also interact with certain medications, and laws surrounding its use vary depending on where you live. Because of these factors, researchers stress that medical supervision and careful screening are essential in a clinical setting. One of the most intriguing findings in psychedelic research is that many participants describe their sessions as among the most meaningful experiences of their lives. People often report feeling deeply connected to nature, humanity, or loved ones. Others describe a temporary loss of ego, powerful emotion breakthroughs, or a renewed sense of purpose. Scientists continue debating whether these experiences are purely psychological, spiritual, or some combination of both.
I experience complete ego dissolution. What happens when you lose your sense of self, which is to say your ego, there are no walls between you and everything else.
Everything, yeah.
And so you could say you're very vulnerable, but then you are able to have this experience of merging with something larger than yourself. And that was really beautiful. The lasting effect of that was the idea that you could give up your sense of self or your ego and not disappear. And that there was something deeper than self, something deeper than ego that would endure.
Whatever the explanation, these profound experiences may play an important role in the therapeutic effects observed in clinical studies. After decades of being dismissed, psilocybin has returned to the scientific spotlight. Researchers are uncovering evidence that when used responsibly in carefully controlled therapeutic settings, it may help people struggling with depression, anxiety, addiction, and other mental health challenges. At the same time, many questions remain. Who benefits the most? How long do the effects last? Can microdosing deliver meaningful benefits? And how can these treatments be made safe, ethical, and accessible? The answers are still unfolding. What is clear is that psilocybin has become one of the most exciting areas of mental health research today. Whether you see these mushrooms as medicine, a tool for self-discovery, or simply a fascinating subject of scientific inquiry, they remind us that human mind still holds many mysteries. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the Redacted Tapes wherever you listen to podcasts. If there's a mystery, conspiracy, scientific breakthrough, or unexplained phenomenon you'd like us to cover next, let us know. Until next time, stay curious, keep asking questions, and remember, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction.